Okay. Hi. Hello, everybody. Today is Thursday, and we said we were going to try to do a little live for our followers, for our clients who are always asking what's going on, what's going on. So I have attorney Carl Pierre with me. Carl, move a little bit more forward. Okay, there you go. Yeah, because you're disappearing in the background right there. Okay, much better,
All
much
right.
better. So, basically, we wanted to talk about what's going on. Today, we're going to stick to mostly English and maybe a little bit of Creole, even though Carl is 100% American, but his parents are Haitian. So, he's got to know some Creole. So, I know if you have
Definitely, definitely do.
questions in Creole and you want to ask your questions, go ahead, no problem. At the end, we'll take questions. But for now, we're going to talk about what's going on in the world of immigration for at least for this week. Pretty much everything is changing. One of the things I did want to talk about was the TPS. So I'm just gonna say like in Creole, if anybody has questions at the end, they can send their questions. Si ou gen kesyon pou an kreol, ou gen avoye kesyon yo an kreol, nap gade yo apre, epi nap bay repons sou sa kap fet lan imigrasyon. Okay. So here we go. So this week I spoke to somebody and they she said to me like she's Haitian and she has TPS and she was freaking out because she said, "Oh, TPS is ending this month." And I said, "No, like a lot of people don't know about the just decision of the federal judge that they blocked the ending of TPS." So that's something that, I wanted to talk about because apparently like there's still a lot of people that don't know what's going on. So it makes it a little bit difficult for them because they're thinking like, oh my god, my status is ending right now. So the situation is you have a lot of people that entered legally with humanitarian parole. Some people even came through the border, but they used the CBP1 application, which, if you don't know, this under CBP1, this also gave you a type of parole because you made the appointment in advance. So you kind of have a legal entry. And then they applied for TPS. So now, one of the things the Trump administration is trying to do is end TPS. So, Carl, maybe you can tell us about what happened with the court case with the TPS. It was Trump had made it an attack. Well, not him specifically, but Christy Nome and the Trump administration had made an announcement back in February that TPS was going to end for the Haitian community in August. So, can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. So on June 27, 2025, the U.S. government announced that TPS for Haitians would end September 2nd, 2025, and that was going to impact looking at more than 500,000 people. They
Mhm,
claimed that the conditions in Haiti had improved so much so that TPS no longer needed to be extended. So with
mhm,
TPS, the temporary protection status, it's given to countries where, based off the country condition report that is done, if there are situations such as government turmoil, natural disasters, civic strife, as they call it,
mhm, mhm,
causing that it's a danger and a harm for the individuals to remain in their home countries, they
mhm,
can then receive a protected status here in the United States.
mhm,
Usually, it is extended and provided for a period from anywhere between 12 to 18 months, and then it
mhm.
gets redesignated or it gets renewed again. And so, but that's under the conditions where they review and see at the time, have the country conditions ever changed for that country, and does the condition that warranted the TPS, is that still in existence? So the government did take a look this year, and they said that that it was warranted, and that the conditions have changed so much so that TPS was no longer warranted and should have been taken away, which we all know that's not the case, not in Haiti. So,
So exactly, and that's one of the weird thing is that it had been given by the Biden administration for 18 months, and those 18 months were supposed to end in February 2026. But since this they've been trying to end it and saying it was going to end in August, it's going to end in September, like they don't even want to let the 18 months run out. So a federal judge said that they can't do that. They can't just stop TPS in the middle of the time. Now, what the government can do, and people should be prepared for this, is in February when it's time to renew since it's a different administration, they can say that they're not going to renew. What they're supposed to do is look at the country conditions. The process is that they look at the country conditions and see if the country conditions have improved. And most of the time, the governments that have come before usually don't end TPS, because there's also an issue about the families that have already been here. There's some people that have kids that are born here in the United States, and they've been here for like 10 years. For example, the first TPS that they gave for Haiti was when they had the earthquake,
Right.
and that was back in 2000. What was it, 2010, I think it was. So
Yeah.
people that had that TPS, now we're talking about like 15 years, and there's been here in the United States like nonstop. And then the new TPS was given after the president was assassinated, and basically there was like turmoil and all these things happening. And Haiti's still like that, where there's no there's kind of a power vacuum because we still don't have a president. There's like an interim government with all these like ministers, but there's no official president, and they haven't been able to have elections because of, the gangs. So the situation with the gangs in Haiti, a lot of people say that they were initially started by people in the government that wanted to control the people, so because they were being funded and getting money and all that stuff, like actually money from government officials. They actually just arrested someone who was high up in the government, a minister, and was a businessman, for giving money to the gangs, and having some type of connection with him. I don't know all the details, but it came out in, I think, the Miami Herald, because it was all over the news. So the situation hasn't gotten better. The issue is that I guess the judge decided is to cut TPS beforehand, or the normally it should be at least let it run for the 18 months, and when the 18 months ends, which is in February, then the administration should evaluate it. But to say like, no, we're going to cut it from now, it just seems like you just want to like deport everybody, and you're not really caring about what the situation is. And I think that's why the judge let it run out. But I don't want people to have a false sense that it might, yeah, it's going to be renewed, because based on what we're seeing, it may not be renewed.
Right.
So one of the news that came out today that I wanted to talk about was the TPS actually for Nicaragua, for Honduras, and from Nepal. Those people actually had their TPS that they were trying to end. That their TPS did get to the point of the 18 months, and they were supposed to be renewed, and it wasn't renewed. And basically, the administration said that no, the country conditions in these countries are fine, and they can go back. The issue is the people that have it from Nicaragua and Honduras, a lot of them have had it since the year 2001. So you're talking about people that have been here for like almost 25 years, and they have kids here, and they have, maybe grandkids here and everything. So it gets really hard. But hold on, Carl. I think we may have to restart the live, because it's going on Facebook, but it's not going on Instagram.
Yeah, Facebook and
So
YouTube are working. My Instagram wasn't.
we're trying to do something new tonight, where we're trying to do Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And apparently the two of them are working, but Instagram is not. So we might have to go and just do it on Instagram, because that's where we always do it, and that's where most of our people are waiting for the live. So give me like 5 minutes, and then we'll contact you back, okay? And we'll probably
Okay.
restart. Okay.
Sure.
All
No
right.
problem. Mhm.
Hello, everybody. So we had some technical difficulties today. Today we are going to have another attorney with us, attorney Carl Pierre. We started the live before with Carl, but for some reason it was only working on Facebook and YouTube. So, but now Instagram is working. So we're going to start all over again, and Carl's going to join us today. So we were talking about the news that are coming out. Today's live is going to be mostly in English, because Carl doesn't speak Spanish. But here he comes. Here he comes. Here he comes. There we
Should be
go.
working now.
Hey, Carl.
All right, there we go.
Much better, much better. Okay, so yeah, for some reason we were having technical difficulties, and it wasn't working on Instagram, but now it's working on all three platforms: Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. So
Great.
today we're gonna do our live in English, and we were just discussing. We're talking about the TPS actually for today, that we found out that the appeals court actually agreed with the administration, the current administration. And even though the people that are from Nicaragua, Honduras, and Nepal, many of them have been here for many years, some as long as 20, 25 years, they're now being told that they're going to have to leave the country. So it's a very difficult situation because many of them have been here and established lives, have houses, cars, children, grandchildren. But that's what happened today. So we were talking about a client of mine who's Haitian, and she was telling me like, no, the TPS is ending this month, and I said no. For the Haitian community, it actually is going until February, and the reason for that was because the previous administration had given it for 18 months, but there's no guarantee that after that time it's going to continue. So that's one of the big news that is coming out. So I always tell people, if you have something like TPS, temporary protective status, humanitarian parole, you should still try to see if you can fix your status another way, with a labor certification, or if you have a fear of returning. If you have a valid claim, you can file an asylum, family petition, other type of things. Now, you had a good news today, Carl. One of your clients got good news. So tell me about that, because I know you had to travel to New York.
Yes, so I had to travel to New York to accompany one of our clients who did a family petition. He's originally from Haiti, came to the United States, met the love of his life here, and they began their process. So they did the I-130, which is the family petition, petition for an alien relative, and he qualified under the spousal benefit. So we were able to go to the USCIS office in New York. He conducted the interview, and with great preparation, you get great results. So we were able to prepare him, give him a heads up, knowing what kind of questions to expect, how to answer those questions, any hiccups, any curveballs that may be thrown at him, and how to adjust. So throughout the interview, he was calm, he was cool, he was collected, and even some of the curveballs that we expected when it did come up, he didn't flinch. So he was able to answer those questions. And we were issued initially a request for evidence, but even with that request, we're able to combat that as well, provided the evidence, and then USCIS, they were satisfied with everything that we provided to them, and they approved the I-130, and we're finished with our first step and moving on to the second step so that we could get his adjustment of status and get him his green card under that family-based petition.
Yes, and he had children. They had children together, didn't they? I don't know if they had one or two, but they had children, right?
Yes, 2 children.
Wow. So that's really good evidence of a marriage of good faith. So I always say that when you have children together, that is amazing, because they look at that type of stuff. So can you tell us a little bit about like the marriage of good faith? Like, what are the things that they're looking for? Because one of the things that's happening with the current administration is, normally, if you're missing something, they would give you a request for evidence. One of the things that they have said in this administration, and they're not going to be issuing requests for evidence, even though that's under the discretion of the official, but they're moving towards more like just denying the case if they see that there's
Yes.
something missing, instead of like giving you a chance. Can you explain like what is a request for evidence? What is a notice of intent to deny? What are the type of things that you can get from USCIS if your application is not prepared well? And I'm not just saying this because I'm a lawyer, but this is one of the reasons why sometimes people say, I'll just do it by myself. It's just a form to fill out. But you can get these requests for evidence, and that can be an issue. Hold on a second.
Mhm.
Christian wants to restart one more time.
Okay.
Oh man,
All right.
I'm sorry.
No worries.
We were talking about the new requirements with USCIS. So one of the announcements they made is they are going to be giving less chances, I guess, to fix mistakes. So like, normally, you can talk about what happens normally, and what's going to happen from now on. So like I said, the new requirements are going to be much more. So let's talk about what it used to be, and then kind of explain what it is. So what is a request for evidence? Because you mentioned that your client got a request for evidence for his family petition. What is a request for evidence when you get that from USCIS?
Sure. So a request for evidence is pretty much like what it says in its name. It's USCIS. They're asking for more information. So once we go through the interview and the officer is asking the questions, and we're able to answer some things, but if there's anything that may have just been unclear, or when the officer passes it on to the supervisor to make final approval, if they want a little bit more information, some more clarity, they'll issue a request for evidence. So that way we're able to submit documents that they may be looking for, whether it be, say, a certified copy of a marriage certificate, or if it's photos of the accounts showing joint ownership, or maybe a bill in each member of the family's name, something with showing shared address. So whatever evidence that it is that they're asking for, whatever documents, they will lay it out in that request for evidence to let you know how that you can comply, and they'll give you the time limit and let you know when you should answer by. And that's one key factor, something that's very important, that we want people never to overlook, is the fact that there's also a deadline that you have to respond by a certain date. So
Exactly.
if you don't respond, they're going to deem that, okay, you don't want to respond, you don't have this evidence, you're abandoning. We'll go ahead and just deny it outright.
Exactly. And then what kind of things are considered a marriage of good faith? Because there are certain requirements, because people think it's just like, oh, I can fill out the form by myself. It's just a form that I have to fill out. And a lot of people don't understand that in addition to the form, there are certain things that are evidence of a marriage of good faith, because USCIS, and they see a lot of people that are getting married just for getting their papers, and even for the U.S. citizen. Some U.S. citizens do this as a business. They like get married, so then the person pays them, and they're making money off of it. So they kind of had this mentality that, oh, this could be a fraud marriage, and they kind of go in with that a lot of times when they go to the interview. So that marriage of evidence of a marriage of good faith is so important. So can you give us some examples of what is a marriage of good faith, or evidence that they could require to show that?
Sure. So some of the evidence that they do require, as I mentioned, is like documents showing joint ownership. So if there's a home or an apartment, whether they own or they're renting, to see if their names are on the lease. Are both parties' names listed? Are there any bills that they share? Who pays the bills in the home? Also bank accounts. So is there a joint bank account? Normally, a joint bank account in a marriage is a very good sign, because it shows that, yes, we are commingling our funds, and there isn't that, I'm trying to hide money from my spouse. It's understandable that, yes, some individuals, they may have a separate account, but having that joint account together, showing that we are in this together, in it for the long haul. That's one of the good evidence that helps to show it. We also like to include pictures showing the partners together at family events, family functions, holidays, birthdays, graduations, showing interaction with each other's families. So that way, you're building the case and showing the longevity of this relationship, and the validity of that relationship as well. So
True.
looking at financial documents. All those records, even if they file taxes in the past years. So if they filed taxes together, they can show that as well. So that's just a quick little list of some of the documents that we
Yeah,
have.
it's so true, because a lot of people think it's this. This is, oh, I just fill out the paperwork, and then they don't understand. But the big thing that people need to know is that the USCIS of today is not the USCIS of yesterday. Because
Exactly.
in let's say, I would say, last year, you would have had the opportunity to submit all these types of evidence that you're talking about that are missing. But now more and more they're saying, we're not going to give a request for evidence. We're not even going to issue you like a notice of intent to deny, which the notice of intent to deny is worse than a request for evidence.
It is, yes.
Because the time is shorter. So as you said, there's a time limit, and if you don't respond within that time, forget it. They can just deny the case. And what happens when they deny the case? You got to file all over again.
All over.
So, but the other big immigration news is, you may not even have the chance to file all over again, because what they're talking about now is, if you get denied, technically now you've fallen out of status. So they're talking about issuing a notice to appear
Hmm.
in court. So basically placing you in removal proceedings. Whereas before, if your case got denied, maybe you had time to, they didn't automatically issue a notice to appear immediately because maybe they were missing some evidence, something, and you could just refile it again. But that opportunity may not be something that exists anymore. So, and can you talk about like the NOID, for example? What's the difference between the NOID and the RFE? Because I know the NOID is a little bit scarier. People hear like notice of intent to deny. What do you mean?
Yeah.
So,
um, Yeah, so
mhm,
like with the NOID, or the notice of intent to deny, it is a higher standard. So it's they're going to be requesting more information, and like you said, it's going to be a shorter time period, a shorter turnaround to provide those documents. Um, and in my experience, like you're seeing with the NOID, if you fail to comply, that is more of a chance like they're ready to go ahead and deny.
yeah,
So
they're already
previous,
thinking about it. They're like they
right?
already maybe are suspicious that maybe this is a fake marriage, a fraud
Hmm.
marriage. So they are just like, okay, you have like 30 days, I think it is, for annoyed.
Yes,
Whereas a request for evidence, they could give you 60 days, 90 days, even up to 120 days I've seen for a request for evidence. But annoyed, they're like they're not playing with you. Like you gotta answer
right.
right away. And then another thing that is I had recently with a case that we just got this green card approved for a marriage as well, is it was a young couple, and they were from Panama, and they tried to do all the paperwork by themselves. And the issue is they didn't realize was the financial aspect, because it's not just, people think it's just, oh, the family petition and the green card. There's another form that is more complicated in a sense,
Hmm.
which is the affidavit of support, and that's the financial aspect. So the person who's the petitioner has to show that they can financially support this spouse at least until that person becomes a US citizen. So not just till they get a green card, but until they actually become a US citizen. So in this case, this young couple, they didn't know about the financials, because the petitioner has to show that they make a certain amount of money, and they look at the poverty guidelines. So the Health and Human Services has their poverty guidelines of what is considered someone who's at the level of poverty, and they look at that to see like if you can actually maintain this person that you're petitioning for. So in this case, this young couple came to us. They had received a request for evidence because they didn't know that the husband had to show, who was a U.S. citizen, that he had to show that he made a certain amount of money. They were like a young couple, and when that happens, is there a solution? Is everything lost when the petitioner doesn't make enough money, or is there a way that they can get some help to show that they make enough money? So tell me about that.
Yeah, so all isn't lost in that case, because there is the opportunity to now get a joint sponsor. So you can get another a friend, loved one that wants to step in and says, "Okay, yes, I do make over the guidelines, and if you add my income, it'll put us over that threshold, and therefore they'll be able to qualify." So that is something that not everyone is privy to. They don't know, and then they feel like, oh, all is lost and I can't go any further. But again, you want to reach out to your attorneys, the legal professionals. That's the things that we know, the little tips and tricks, and we'll be able to help you to fill out those forms, because it's straightforward, but then it's not. So there's going to be some information that may trip you up, and we just want to ensure that it's filled out correctly. Everything is placed, all the evidence is given that is necessary, and not too much is given or not enough. So that way we can prove that you do qualify, you meet the poverty guidelines, and also. Some people, they're just not always checking the guidelines. So they may be referring to guidelines from the year 2023, 2022. So it's like, that was a different threshold. You don't
Yes.
qualify anymore.
Yes, exactly, because the poverty guidelines went up. So, and that's because the cost of living went up in the United States. So, someone who was making like $20,000 last year, and they're single, they could petition for their spouse. But now I think you need to show that you're making at least, let's say, 25,000 or something around that, because if you are just supporting yourself at 20,000 a year, you're technically on the poverty guidelines. So
Right.
they also look at the household, and that's exactly why the poverty guidelines is something to look at, because it's not just a number; it's also how many people depend on you. So
Exactly.
you could be making 50,000 a year, but if you got 5 kids and then you want to petition for an extra person, they're going to look at that and say, well, you can't support this extra person because you have 5 kids and your wife, and this is an extra person that's going to be dependent on you. So that poverty guidelines is so important. And I was happy that, our client, the Panamanian client, actually was able to get her green card. So we're super happy for her. That was another win. So
Yes.
there's all these things happening in the world. We don't always want to talk about like the bad, but every now and then, there is a ray of light, and we do get the positive results sometimes. But with these type of cases, I just want to say it's so important now more than ever. And I'm not just saying that because I'm an attorney, but just because of the issue of putting someone in removal proceeding because
Mhm.
their application was denied. That's really, it's true that that's something that they could always do. This is not something new, but it wasn't really something that they were doing. They weren't really enforcing this because they were giving people time to maybe fix the issue, fix the problem. Maybe they got denied because they didn't know that they needed an extra sponsor because they didn't make enough money. Maybe they got denied because they didn't submit enough documentation. But now it's like they're not even really giving people a chance to fix those type of things. So it's super important now to like try to get your stuff done with someone who knows what
Yes.
they're doing, you know? So those are like I think a couple of the things that are happening with immigration. The family petition thing I think is a big deal because people think that like, oh yeah, this is something easy, and now you could easily be placed in removal proceedings for either filing a family petition, or if they suspect that it's fraudulent. That's another case. I don't know if you heard, but in Miami, they arrested someone who was a paralegal who had said that they did like 40 immigration cases,
Yeah.
like asylum cases that were completely fraudulent. Like they made up the
Hmm.
story completely. So that's something that
Yes.
I always tell the client, it's better to tell the truth, even if you don't have a lot of evidence. If you have a real story that could be compelling enough to win, than
Right.
rather than try to make up stuff and come with false documents. And now they're talking about really going after people for fraud, and the what that can lead to, and this is also related to the family petition, is denaturalization,
Right. Yeah.
because they want to go back and check family petitions that were done before, and if they feel that that family petition was a fraud marriage, they could denaturalize you. Or that's one of the things that they are planning or working on, and trying to do that with through the courts, because it's
Hmm.
a little bit harder to denaturalize someone. But if they can go through like a civil procedure, maybe saying that the person committed a fraud or something like that, they could more easily do that denaturalization. So that's a whole other thing related to family, that people think like, oh, family cases are easy, but they're not.
Right.
They-
And even then, so now with the family petitions, the time has been extended. So normally before you were looking at maybe 8 to 13 months for petitions to go through. The time has extended now, and they're really tightening up. It's a stricter scrutiny that they're reviewing these petitions. So your petitions are now taking a little bit longer for them to be approved. But that's something that we want to reassure everyone. Don't worry about it. Don't be afraid. Again, once we're working with you and getting the packages set together, gathering the evidence and making sure that everything is within there. Although the USCIS website may say that it's gonna take, I believe it's up to about like 60 months now for petitions to be approved.
Mhm.
That's a maximum amount of time that it could take. It's not saying that it's going to take that long. So it could be approved like it was normally before in 8 months, or you can get it in 10 months. It doesn't have to necessarily take all the 60 months. As long as, everything is there, it's prepared, you have a well prepared package, and we submit it. And, we prepare you, have you going for the interview to answer your questions.
It really does depend on where the person is too, because there's different offices for USCIS. So some offices are taking much longer, some offices are taking less time. So that's something that it's not just because you're here, maybe your friend took like 2 years to get their case approved, doesn't mean that your
Yeah.
case is gonna take that long to get approved, because there's I think there's like maybe 11 different processing centers for USCIS. So it really depends on where your processing center is, how behind they are. But yes, it's true. It is getting a lot of things are slowing down, and that's because there's less people working in the federal government. And USCIS is no different. There's less people working at USCIS, and they've let a lot of people go. So
Yeah.
because of that, processing times are slowing down. But it still doesn't mean that like your case cannot be approved. But yeah, there, it definitely means that you should like make sure that you know what you're doing, and it may not be as easy as before, filling out these forms. And the risk is much higher of being placed in removal proceedings or getting a denial, compared to the way it used to be. So I would say that 100%.
Yeah.
But we have a question right here. So
Mhm.
they said, someone's asking, what would you recommend for people whose TPS is about to expire? Should they start the process now or can they wait? So I think this applies to a lot of people in
Mhm.
different countries, because pretty much I would say most of the countries that have TPS, and there are a lot of countries that have TPS,
Yeah.
they're probably not going to be renewed. I would say that just because under this administration, it doesn't seem like they're renewing TPS. And I haven't really heard of any country getting their TPS renewed. I remember Ukraine got their humanitarian parole extended,
Mhm.
but that was with the previous administration. I don't know if they would take TPS away from Ukraine because there is like an active war going on over there, but I'm not sure because I nobody really knows 100% what's going to happen with this administration. But I would say there is something that you should definitely try to do if you have an opportunity. So what would you say, Carl, to people that maybe, like for example, in the Haitian community, a lot of people had TPS and they're afraid because in February it's going to end. What would you recommend?
I would definitely recommend to start looking into a process that can help you to get another status, because the danger is being out of status. So you want to make sure that if there is a status, a petition that's available for you to do, that you take it. If there is another opportunity that presents itself, make sure you take it. Don't sit around and wait to see if TPS will be renewed. If there is a family petition that can be done, a labor certification, even in filing an asylum application. There are strategies where we can make petitions as far as the asylum goes, even if it's submitting past the 1 year deadline. We can petition to the courts and make sure that that the asylum application is received, and there are different forms of relief that you can also seek. So we just always want to reiterate that there are other statuses that you can apply for, other petitions that you can do. So definitely go for it. See if you qualify. Speak to an individual. Let that lawyer or attorney speak to you and give you all your options. And don't just have to sit around and wait, because we don't want to wait till it's too late. It's the last minute, and then now there's nothing that can be done for you, especially with the fact that the processes are being slowed down and it is taking a little longer to get approvals. So you want to start as soon as possible. So that way, if your name is part of that number, you'll be called and you're able to get your approval.
Yes, 100%. And also, like you said, start those petitions. For example, people that had, I would say, TPS for since the early 2000s, or like some Haitians had TPS since 2010. And when they had, if they have like children now that, especially I know with the Honduran community and the Nicaraguan community, some of their kids are adults now. So if those children can do family petitions for you, this is a great time to do those petitions, especially if you had a legal status. And if your entry was legal, even better, because if you had a legal entry and your child petitions for you, usually then you should be able to do an adjustment of status. The issue comes when you have an illegal entry. At that point, you might need a waiver, which is why it's so important to talk to a lawyer, because the waivers are a little bit more complicated.
Yes.
But that because in that case you may have to leave the United States and come back, and we want to make sure that you're able to come back. That's why we want the waiver, because with the waiver of unlawful presence, they it's kind of like they forgive your unlawful entry, but you have to have a good justification. You need to have a qualifying relative. Usually it has to be a spouse or a parent that petitions and says, I am going to be seriously affected if my wife wife or my child was deported. So there's a whole process. It's not an easy 1, 2, 3 thing, but there is a possibility. So people shouldn't completely lose hope, because I know some people are feeling really hopeless. I spoke to someone yesterday and she's super nervous, super upset, freaking out. And I said, you can calm down. She has a possibility of having a status because she's married to a US citizen. And so hopefully, that is something that works out for her. But it's just kind of, for some people are getting really scared. And I completely understand the situation. Why? Because people watching things on the news, but you should always try to keep a positive mentality, because as you stay positive, the more positive things come to you. You know,
Exactly. Hmm.
it's like a self-fulfilling prophecy. So but definitely I would say, at least especially for anyone who has TPS, to not wait until their TPS is going to expire, because
Hmm.
what we're seeing is that this administration is not renewing the TPSs. And I know, for example, for the Venezuelan community, there is a case in court. So it's pending right now for Venezuela, because they've been fighting this because of what's happening in Venezuela. But also, everything's changing so quickly. I heard there's like warships in the ocean from the United States going towards Venezuela.
Wow.
Yeah, so there might be some conflict over there. They're also talking about pulling out of the United States is talking about pulling out of Ukraine. If we pull out of Ukraine, I don't know how that would affect the Ukrainian community, because
Right.
maybe this administration could say, well, since there's no more problems in Ukraine, the Ukrainians can go back. That's a possibility as well. Because the issue with the temporary protective status is that you have a status that's protected temporarily because
Hmm.
there's some type of tragic issue in your country. It could be a flood, it could be an earthquake, it could be war. But if they decide to say, hey, there's no more war, then that could be a reason to stop the TPS for the Ukrainians as well. So at this point, I would say anyone that has TPS from any country. I know that Myanmar that has TPS, and they were trying to end TPS for that too. If you have a possibility, don't wait. If you have a family member who is a US citizen, and that person can file a petition for you. If you're working at a job and the owners of the job really love you and you do a great job, and you could qualify for a labor certification. If you're educated, if you have a college degree,
Hmm.
definitely you could qualify for a labor certification. So those are things that people should try to think about, and not rely only on the TPS. So
Yes.
but I think we talked about a lot of stuff for today. There's more things that I can't even think of it. It's just so many things changing. But I feel like the family petition thing was something worth mentioning, because a lot of people think it's easy, and it's not, and it's going to get harder.
Right. Exactly. And then
So,
especially with the family petitions, we want to make sure that it's submitted we submit complete, well documented petitions. You want to avoid unnecessary denials, and you want to avoid, most importantly, any hint of fraud. You want to make sure that there's no suspicion that there could be any fraud here, because, as you mentioned earlier, fraud can, in immigration, if that carries over, that has huge
yes.
ramifications for you in the future. So we don't want you to be barred reentry, or barred from any immigration relief ever in the future. So make sure we go through the petitions with you, go through the documents, make sure everything is correct. Make sure all all your T's across, I's dotted, everything is there. So that way you don't get the denials, you don't get the RFE, you don't get a notice of intent to deny.
That
And
fraud stays on your record. Like what you said is exactly right. If you had a fraud in the past, let's say you had a fraud marriage, and then you get married to someone new, and this is a real marriage, they can still deny your case. I just read a
right.
case like that. I don't know if it was from California, but there was a case. It went all the way up to like the higher courts, because this person had a second marriage. It's a real marriage,
Mhm.
but they were accused of fraud in their first marriage. The officer said that he believed that it was a fraud marriage, and they denied it. And I guess he never like disproved it, so it stayed on his record. So when he got married to his second wife, the officer said, no, because you had a fraud marriage before, we're going to deny this marriage. And he tried to appeal it and everything, and the judge sided with USCIS. So if there's any suspicion of fraud, you need to address that, and you need to
Yeah.
show proof, because that stays on your record for any other application that you want to do in the future will be affected, and they can be denied because of that. So that's such a big deal. That's why I always tell my clients, do not get married for papers, do not get married, don't do a fraud marriage. It's not worth it unless you are in a real relationship and you guys are really together and you really want to get married. Then yeah, go ahead and do it, because you're going to have to go in front of an officer and you're going to have to show that this is a real marriage. And if you can't answer questions, it's going to come out way better, way worse for you. It would have been better if you tried another way than to go up in front of an officer and make up a bunch of stuff. These officers are trained to catch fraud. So I always tell my clients, do not do that. Do not try to do a fake marriage. It's not going to help you. You want to be in a real relationship, and if that's the case, then that's one thing. But to go and like say, oh yeah, I'm going to do, no, don't do that. And I will not represent somebody who that I feel like it is a fake marriage either, because it also can affect us as attorneys to do something like that. So, that's something that I always try to stay away from. Like, oh, stay away from that. But anyway, Carl, I want to say thank you to you for tonight, for being with us. I know that we had some technical difficulties. I know everything's been working on YouTube and Facebook, but we've been having issues with Instagram. So what we'll probably do is we'll probably take this live and post it on Instagram for those who didn't see it tonight. And then maybe next time we'll do another live. We didn't really speak Creole in this live, but if we have anybody who has some questions, they can send it. Some people don't believe that I speak Creole because my name is Claxton. Sounds so British and stuff. But I am half Haitian, and my dad is from the British Virgin Islands, so that's the reason why the name is. But I do speak Creole. Oui, moi parle Creole. So you can also ask me questions in Creole if you have, and I'm willing to help anybody from the Haitian community, from the Ukrainian community, Spanish community. I'm pretty much. I would say I try to treat all my clients the same. I don't have really like favoritism for one country or another. Even though I have a lot of Venezuelan clients, I also have a lot of Colombian clients, but I try to treat my clients fairly.
Yes.
And I think Carl is the same way. We try to take care of all our clients. But I think for today, we're going to like end the live because it's already getting late. It's like almost 9:00. Thank you, Carl, for having patience with me today for our usually the lives are like 30 minutes, but because of the technical difficulties, we went a little bit over that time. But thank you for your time. Thank you for all the efforts, and congratulations on your win and your approval of the family petition. All right.
Oh, thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
All right. See you later. Bye. Have a
All
good
right.
evening. Bye.
Bye.